Hi guys, this video would be about the lab that I gave you or we gave you last Friday, and today would just be discussing, or this video is about to this is gonna be about discussing what you should have done with the lab, not the project, with the lab. I noticed that you guys had some difficulty with the functional tests, so we're going to be delving a little deeper into that. Um, and what you should have done with the functional test. Okay, and then I'm just gonna show you what the quickest steps are that would actually give you a satisfactory lab activity. Okay, so we're gonna do the first step, which is to create an environment. So to do that, I'm gonna use virtual env because that's what I know how to use. That's what I commonly use. So let's call this environment. You can use venv like we've done in class, so no problems there. After we've created the environment, we need to install our necessary software or necessary packages. So namely, that's going to be Django and Selenium. So I will pip install Django 1.11.28. It's the most up-to-date 1.11 version. Instead of the 17, you can still use 17. I'm just using 28. And then Selenium 3.141. That shouldn't take long to install. Now we've got everything installed. Okay, see, that's one problem that I did. I installed it without activating my environment, so let's get to that. So I'm on a Mac, so I'm using the source command. On Windows, you don't have to do this. Source environment bin activate, and then let's do the pip install again. So this time it's just gonna copy everything. Still should be quick. Now we have everything installed. We can write our functional tests because that is the first step after downloading all the files. So let's go to lab1 or functional test. It looks something like this. We rearrange our imports. So let's add the unit test import first because that's from the Python standard library, and then we import and then we have our Selenium because that's a third-party app. Now let's fix this class, this test class, to have two spaces in between the imports, pep8. Now let's go to line 16. If you notice, it's just browser.get. It should be self.browser.get. Now we have everything here. Okay. Notice how this test can display a heroes list, and more information per hero has a story. All you had to do in your lab activity was to implement whatever was written in here. For example, this note here on line 18 says she notices the page title and header mention the will of the wisps, so wiki. So how do I know, or how can the test mimic that action? Basically, just create an assertion to check if that is indeed what is in the title. Now let's go to the second story. She sees a list containing 3 heroes with their corresponding names, health points, and damage. For that line, okay, notice how the first action is that she sees a line. So that line, a list rather, she sees a list, which means that we need to check if there is a list. I can say hero list is equal to self.browser.find element by ID. Let's say it's named hero list. So everything that we're writing in here are assumptions about what the code will be. Okay? So when we're making these functional tests, remember that it's not about what has already been implemented, but what is going to be implemented. So you don't actually have any idea what their IDs are going to be. Instead, these tests are going to be the specifications onto which developers, or in this case, you for your projects or labs, this would be your guide. So in this example, we're already being told that our ID should be hero underscore list. And then we need to assert, okay, because we need to check if it is indeed a list. So assert, we need to check if the tag name is indeed equal to a list. So if it is we'll check if the string ul, or aka it's saying that it's an unordered list, is equal to the type of element that hero list is. So hero list dot tag name. That's basically it. So the next one, when she selects one of the heroes, she is sent to another page. Obviously, to select one of the heroes, we need a reference to one of the heroes. So let's say hero is equal to self.browser.find element by ID hero jester. So we're clicking the jester. To do that click, we say hero.click. And then we have to wait for the browser to load the next page. So we'll just sleep. Obviously, this time package isn't needs to be imported. So we go back to the top, import time. Now let's go back to our code. Time.sleep. And then once we've waited that time, we check if it is indeed sent to another page containing more information. So we can assert not in, assert equal that the URL that looks something like this, http localhost 8000 slash hero slash jester, if that is the current URL, self.browser.get current URL. That's checking for equality. Now we move on to the next story point, which is she's passed the page title. So that is very similar to what we did in line 21, which is already given to you. So let's just copy that here. But instead of seeing this string, the will of the wisps wiki, we change that to, let's say, jester. So we're checking if the string jester is in the browser title. And then the last item is, well, in that page, there's a button that goes back to the other page. So let's find it. Let's say back button is equal to self.browser.get or find element by ID. Let's say it's a back button. We need to check if it does indeed have a back to heroes list string. So let's say self.assert equal back to heroes list, and then back button dot text. Okay, so we asserted that part wherein it should be labeled that, and then we need to click that back button. Obviously, we'd have to wait again, and then we have to assert that we are again back to our home page. So let's copy lines 37 to 40 here, but instead of hero jester, the URL should be heroes, and then the test is gonna fail. Now if you notice, everything should fail right now because we don't have any of this implemented. If I run this right now, it will actually error out because I don't have a server. So let's actually start that project. Django admin, start project, Will-O-Wisp, and I want it to be in this base directory. And I already have it here. Remove them one by one to show you how to do everything. So I will remove the heroes folder, rm-rf. I will remove Will-O-Wisp, which contains my settings file, Will-O-Wisp. And I will remove manage.py, that basically tells me this is a Django project. Now I should have this set up. I just have the project specs here, environment variable. I have a log for my Gecko driver because I did something, or because I ran Gecko driver from here, and my functional tests. Outside of this folder, I have the HTML files, so I will move them here later after I create my heroes app again. Okay. So the first things first, we need to create a project. Django admin, create or start app, or start project, start project, Will-O-Wisp, and I want it to be in this directory. So it should look something like this. Next is I need it to have a heroes app. So that would be Python manage.py start app called heroes. And then I'm basically copying all of my HTML files here. Okay, and I will copy all the PNG files. So now my files should look something like this. You can see the blue ones are the folders. Okay, and then all my other files. Now I move all my HTML files into a template folder inside heroes, because heroes should contain something like an admin.py, apps.py, all the migrations, models, tests, and views. It doesn't have a templates folder, so we need to create a templates folder for it. Make dir heroes / templates, and then we can just copy to there. So heroes templates, okay, copy to it, okay, all my HTML files and all my PNG files. Now It didn't move it. Oh, I copied it instead of moved it. So I will, if you check heroes slash templates, it should already contain stuff, but everything is still in my base directory because I copied it. I want to remove all of those, so I will remove everything. I will just check if everything is there in my templates. Yes, they are. So which means I will also remove all the PNG files. Now I should have a directory that looks something like this. I just may have my environment folder, my heroes folder, and my will-o-wisp folder with my manage.py, and then a functional test.py and my gecko driver log. Okay. Now would be a good time to commit. I have my functional tests.py ready, and I have my gecko driver. Oh, I have my environment, I have my heroes app, so it's a good time to commit. So we do a git init, and then we make a .git ignore, and then in that git ignore, I am going to add all my cache files. So I will echo every pyc file, and then I will put that into my git ignore. Now if I look at my git ignore, it's there. I will also add to the git ignore my environment folder. So let's do that command again, but instead of pyc, I will add my environment folder. Now notice how doing a git status would only show me my git ignore, my gecko driver logs, my heroes, my functional tests, my manage.py, and my will-o-wisp folder. Nowhere in there is my environment folder because I already have hidden it from git. We could use that git ignore as an initial commit. So let's add that, git add .git ignore, and then let's do this shortcut, initial commit with git ignore. So right now I'm not really going into how to write proper commits. This is all about how you should have done the functional test and the rest of your project, the rest of your lab. Now we can add, next commit would be to add that functional tests. Okay. And we can commit that as implemented the functional test. Now that we have that, our git status should look something like this. We should probably also add that gecko driver to our git ignore. So let's echo that again. Gecko driver.log into our git ignore. Now if you do a git status, it's no longer going to be trapped. So let's do a git commit or git add or git ignore, and then we want to commit it Give the message that update ignored the Gecko driver logs. Now that we have that out of the way, we can now go into making or trying to run our tests. So let's do that. Python functional test or lab1 functional test.py. That should try and open a, okay, did not open a browser. That's a common error that you guys have encountered. So the solution there is to add what was in the, or what was at the bottom of the functional tests.py that we created in class, which is this one. Okay, this last two lines, if name is main, basically this is checking if you are running it from the command line. So I will paste that at the end. Now if we run it again, it should run properly, where it will open a Firefox window that has been automated. Okay, and it will not show anything. You will see the striped address bar. It will close. It will error out saying that we reached an error page because we didn't have a page. So what do I do with that? I will, on this tab, okay, notice at the bottom left I have multiple tabs. It's at Django server, so I will run a server from here. So python manage.py run server, and then on this testing tab I will activate my source file, my environment variable, and then here I will try and run my test again. Just this one. Now it should try and open everything up, so our error should change. Okay, but obviously it will fail because welcome to Django is the title. That is not our problem right now. Well, could be. So let's try and solve that. How do we solve that? Let's go into our heroes folder and let's go to Will-O-Wisp. Let's look at our urls.py. Okay, line 16, URL and include. Okay, we will import include from django.conf.urls, and then here we add it like this, r, okay, empty string, so that is just a slash, and then we include heroes.urls. Now by doing this, what we're doing is we're trying to import the urls.py from our heroes app, but our heroes app is still not recognized by our project because, okay, as we've done in class, it's not there yet. So we go to installed apps on line 33, and here line 39 we add at the bottom the heroes project. Now while we have that there, the urls.py file still does not exist. Okay, so what we should do is to create one. Touch heroes urls.py, and then okay, so that's why we know, because our run server errored out. So if we try and run it again, it will actually show you that the heroes app is already there. Why is it not showing? They call it properly heroes. Okay. Our heroes should have a urls.py. I'll try that one more time. It really says heroes is not defined. Okay. So that error is caused by the fact that heroes.urls here is not a string. So that's what it takes in. So let's make that a string. Heroes.urls. Now let's run that again. It should be fine, but does not appear to have any patterns in it. So that means that in this file, heroes.urls.py, we have no URL patterns, which means we have to put some patterns in there. So from django.conf.urls import URL, and then we have URL patterns, and that would be a list of patterns. Okay, now our server should be fine, and we can create our first unit tests. So let's go to heroes and test.py, and then let's do all our tests here. So we need again 2 spaces before the class declaration. Here we will now implement our first test case. So we have the test case class already imported, so we will extend that class. We will test the heroes homepage first. Heroes homepage test. So that extends test case. Here we have a method for the test homepage returns the correct HTML. Taking the self. Now we check for, basically we're going to use the Django test client response is equal to self.client.get heroes, because that's the first URL that we are to test, and we will assert that it uses a certain template. So assert template used. The response we will check against, it should be the heroes.html file. If we run this test, so let's close this server. If we run this tests, I will Python manage.py test. It should tell me that there is no template to render the response. So that's the default error used. That is the default error that is shown by assert template used. Not very helpful, but we know that we're not rendering any templates. Okay, so what does that mean? Obviously, we have to go back to our urls.py, or we first have to create a view for it to be able to render a response or a view, a template. So here, I will, on our heroes.views.py, at the bottom right of your screens, I will import the template view. Okay, so the template view is what basically shows you that you can just import a file into, or a template into your application without using any query sets, okay, or anything that relates to your database, which we'll be talking about in a later video. So we'll import it from Django.views.generic.base, import template view. We don't need this render function anymore. And then from here, we will have to extend the template view function to create a class-based view for this. So we call this hero view or heroes view, hero list, heroes view. Let's call it heroes view. That will implement template view. And the template to be used is going to be heroes.html. If we run it, okay, we've done enough code to do that, to render a template, but we're still not doing anything. Last one, we have to add a URL. So it's a regular expression. It's heroes. It ends there with heroes, and then it's gonna use our heroes view as view, okay, because we need to make it a callable and it is a class-based view. And let's give it a name. Let's call it hero list, hero_list. That will give us an error because we haven't imported that yet. We need to import it, so let's separate that from our Django imports. So from dot, okay, relative import, explicit imports dot views, I will import heroes view. Okay. After that, okay, usually do 2 spaces after imports in Django or in Python. Okay, if we run this, we should be able to okay, let's read this error. Your pattern has a regex with a slash. Okay, let us remove that slash, so that's what it says. And then we get an error that says our template does not exist, heroes.html. What do? We create a heroes.html. Touch heroes. Okay, so in our app templates folder, we create a heroes.html. Now let's run that. It should pass. We can actually now, I actually forgot one commit. I should have committed before doing any coding, but for this video, let's just commit now. Okay, we already have our pass test, so let's add all our files. Okay, so we modified our functional test first. Remember, because we changed we added some lines so that it would run from the command line. So let's commit that first. Git add our functional test.py. Okay, a commit message should show that added lines to enable being run from the command line. Now we need to add our heroes.py, or okay, we add our heroes.py, but if we do that, we will also add our heroes folder rather. We will also add our cache folder. We don't want that, so we will also add that to our git ignore. So I will again do this echo asterisk slash, so for any folder, and then and then we will add that to our git ignore, and then let's add our git ignore, and our commit should look something like git commit -m ignore cache files. Now if you look at our git status, let's just git add our heroes app, our manage.py, and our will-o-wisp folder. Git add will-o-wisp. Now we have all our files necessary. Obviously, I don't need to commit my lab specs. Git commit -m commit add heroes endpoint. Okay, that's actually how you do your lab. All you had to do was do this 3 other times or 4 other times. You just had to copy this or create URLs for all the other heroes. It would look something like this: heroes or heroes/jester, and then this wouldn't be heroes view. Instead, it should be hero jester, or we call it jester view. Okay, and obviously you need to create a test for that first. So let's do that. So literally I will just copy this. I will call this, instead of heroes homepage test, I will call this jester page test. Test that my jester page returns the correct HTML. Instead of heroes, it would be heroes/jester. This would now be called a different name, which is hero, or basically it's going to use the template that we have here, which is, we're expecting it to be the detail view. Okay, heroes.html, we're no longer using that, we're using detail jester.html. Okay, and then you would add another URL here. Okay, let's close this will-o-wisp URLs. So we are in heroes.urls.py if you look at the bottom left. So we need a URL that looks something like, okay, hero/jester, and then it should be, let's say, jester view dot as view name is equal to jester view jester detail. Okay, we'll import that. Let's say jester view, and then here we could just copy this again, 2 spaces, jester view. This would be detail jester. Did I do that correctly? Let's look at our templates. Detail jester.html. Now just try that test one more time. Python manage.py test. We should have our 2 tests passing. Okay, I skipped a step by not running my test first, but this was just to illustrate how you should have done the project. Okay, or this lab rather. For the project, however, You still aren't expected to create HTML templates. But you have to write the templates yourselves. You have to create the HTML files. No, I mean, you've seen the HTML, the specs. You are to create the HTML templates, but you don't need to populate them. Okay? As you can see from what we've done, the heroes.html file did not contain anything. It was just a blank HTML file. Okay, and that is perfectly fine. Okay, all we asked you to do was to create the views. Or well, for the lab, all we asked you to do was to create the views that will render the proper HTML file that already existed. Okay, but then there was one file that needed to be created. It could be empty, the test would still pass, and you're still good. Okay, remember and notice our functional test is still gonna fail because that home page, that slash hero is empty. Okay, so that's what we expected. You made it too hard, a bit too hard for yourselves, but for those who were able to make the tests pass, kudos. Okay, for those who weren't able to do so, it's fine. Okay, and with that, I'm ending this video. Expect another one when where we're gonna talk about views.